Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. The topic in this video is going to be what I'm going to call sunset eye palettes. This is a very specific type of palette that I think is really trendy. You're seeing this color scheme come out right now from so many different brands, and in my eyes, I mean, sunset is just kind of the thought that comes to mind for me. You might describe it other ways, but basically I think the palettes are characterized by having some peachy tones, but also some plummy, kind of burgundy, even purple tones also in there. So you've got these kind of contrasting shades that look really beautiful together on the eyes, and it's really become the key look that certain brands have adopted in their palettes. So I really wanted to hone in on 4 newer palettes in this video that I think have this type of thing going on. One is the Natasha Denona Lila palette. The other is the Huda Desert Dusk palette. Also the Too Faced Just Peachy Mattes palette, and the Lorac Unzipped Desert Sunset palette. To back the story up just a little bit, I have been obsessed with this type of color scheme for quite some time, going back to the Bare Minerals Happy Place quad, okay? In a very subtle way, this quad like kind of initially exposed me to this color combo of peach and plum that I like so much. These tones just work so beautifully together on the eyes. I love it. And what we're seeing more currently is that kind of color scheme just boosted up a notch intensity-wise. So more recently, you know, the Too Faced Peanut Butter and Jelly palette. Why did I like this so much? Well, you've got these terracotta, kind of bronzy, warm browns mixed with plummy shades and purples, and it's really beautiful. Another great option from a more affordable brand, e.l.f., the Mad for Matte 2 palette, again with peaches, warm kind of yellowish tan colors, also a purple thrown in. Fast forward a little bit and we're seeing that kind of color scheme just blowing up in so many different palettes. The first one that I want to mention just briefly at the start here, because I have talked about it before in my Too Faced Peach Collection review. So you guys, if you've watched that video, you know I really love this palette, the Too Faced Just Peachy Mattes. This palette, I think, encompasses the color scheme I'm talking about in a slightly more subtle way color-wise, although these are very intense and rich matte shades. Just really great to work with and blend out on the eyes, but it is working in the kind of look I'm talking about because we've got really warm, brownish peach shades. You've also got what I think is the true definition of a plum color right in here. And then you've got this burgundy shade with a little more pink in it. We're not seeing the full-on purple in this palette, but it is putting together the kind of look that I'm talking about with all the warmth, but also something maybe a little more reddish and burgundy mixed in. So I love that palette. If you adore mattes and you like the thought of just a really warm eye look, I think this is a great one to look into. Now these next few palettes, again, this is a color scheme I'm in love with. I'm not critiquing really the concept behind these palettes, the way the colors are put together, the shade selection, stuff like that. I think it's really great. Although I have a few critiques on a couple of these, and it's just my opinion, and you might not share that same take, but I'm just going to share my thoughts with you, and you can just toss that into your decision-making process if that's where you're at. But this Natasha Denona Lila palette is $129. It's by far the most expensive palette that I'll be talking about. The palette is nice quality. It's got a nice big mirror here. You do have a flap that's attached, and that's going to have all your shade names on it. And it is perforated, and it can come off if you don't care about shade names. No doubt we've got a lot of beautiful shimmers in here. You've got like a really pretty red violet, you know, the color of the red violet Crayola crayon. It's that kind of thing, but with a gorgeous amount of shine. Bluish purples, rusty reds, coppers, kind of a fuchsia color, couple of shimmers that are more on the neutral side. For my skin tone, this would be kind of like my soul highlighting shade down here. There's kind of a dark, like really shimmery, cool brown in this palette too. It does not provide really quite enough contrast for me to really like cut into these shimmery shades. Like let's say I've put one of these colors in my crease to just get started, and maybe I'm gonna pop one of these ultra shimmery tones on my lid. And then I wanna really work into that with a darker shade to get some contrast and depth right in my outer corner. And so I might go to this shade. Well, it really doesn't get dark enough for me in application on the eyes to create enough contrast with these shimmers, because these are really strong shades. They're really like loud, and they need something I think extremely rich and extremely rooted in a matte finish to kind of cut in there and blend in with your eyeliners and create a great amount of contrast with these tones. And of course, we can all say, yes, you could grab any like matte eyeshadow just single from your collection and you might be good to go. Just pair that in with this kind of palette. That's fine, but when I am gonna pay $129 for one eyeshadow palette, I'd really like it to encompass all of my needs. One other small complaint that I have with this palette is that while the shimmers swatch like incredibly well with your finger, and they apply pretty good with your finger if you're just gonna like pat it on your lid, let's say, I'm not always satisfied with the way the shimmers apply with a brush on the eyes. I don't know if anybody else feels this way about the Natasha Denona shimmery shades, but I feel like I have to work with them more than say a Viseart shimmery shadow just to build up the tone on the eyes. Like you've got to kind of do a little tugging, a little extra patting on. They're gorgeous colors. They can be worked with. I like the color scheme. It's a beautiful palette, but this is a review from my perspective and my opinion, and those are the couple of little shortcomings that I think it has. Now let's talk Huda Desert Dusk here. This is a gorgeous outer packaging. I love the way that looks. And then you open it up, you also have a really nicely sized mirror. And then here we're dealing with 18 shades. You see the color scheme that I'm talking about once again. Lots of peachy colors instantly popping out at you, some reddish colors, and then definitely some purpley colors as well. What sets this one apart is the texture in it. You've got mattes in here, you've got shimmery shadows, and I really like working with all of those. You've also got varying levels of sparkle. Some seem to come off as maybe a little bit of like a topper type shade. Colors like Twilight and Retrograde, you know, they might appear even somewhat transparent or sheer as you see them in a swatch, but you put them on top of another color, they take on a different look. They really offer, I think, an avenue to be sort of creative with your look. You've got Cosmo here, which is a straight up glitter. Okay, so that's going to require maybe a glitter glue type primer or some kind of a cream shadow that really lets that start to cling. It's a variety in finishes that some people might be craving and other people might look at and say, well, I don't really need the glitter. I like the color scheme, but I don't need all the razzmatazz, you know, attached to it. There are some shades in here that require extra care, that require a little bit extra building up, or like I said, a certain kind of base, and so it could be a little more fussy for that reason. I do like the mattes in here. As with every palette I'm talking about, I adore the color scheme, but what this is lacking, much like the Natasha Denona palette, is a really, really dark shade, because again, we've got really flashy colors here. We've got some ultra metallic things, even some sparkly things happening in here. We need one, at least one, really, really dark shade. This color right up here, you know, it swatches kind of dark, but by the time I blend this out, say in my crease or outer corner, you know, it's about that deep, and it's not quite enough, I don't think, to hang with some of these shades that are so bold, so metallic. I'm talking about Blood Moon or Turkish Delight. Those shades need something a little bit deeper to anchor the look, so that would be what I see this palette as lacking. And again, it might not be everyone's cup of tea because not everybody cares to have that amount of different finishes, but for me personally, it's definitely a palette I can have fun with, and going forward, I could see myself doing some really cool looks with that. It's just not everything I need, and not to mention that is $65. But here's the palette that really impressed me. It is everything I need in a smaller package, like a smaller quantity of shades, the lowest price tag of anything I've mentioned here, and it's giving me every bit of what I need for this sunset type look, and it is the Lorac Desert Sunset Unzipped palette. First off, quick comment on the unzipped, these new palettes that they've put out. I'm not really sure why they're calling them unzipped, because the only way they seem to follow the former unzipped palettes is just the size of the palette and the amount of shades inside, because those were very monochromatic. Like the first one that they put out, it was like rose gold into burgundy. It was like following a spectrum, and the same thing with the unzipped gold. These palettes, which there are 3 different ones, and this one is my favorite, but as you can see, it's like a splash of different colors as opposed to just following more of a gradient. But this one, just soak this up for a second, because this is everything. This is everything you need in a smaller package here. 10 shades, and it's doing it all. It's got your purple, a real true purple. It's got peach here. It's got this really warm terracotta brown. You've got a couple of different reds. One is gonna veer a little bit more toward pink. One is more rusty. A dark matte brown that, unlike the other palettes where the dark shade seemed to perform lighter on the eyes than it looked in the palette or in a swatch, this one seems to intensify more in application. And I think that might be just the texture of Lorac's shadows, which you guys know I like. They're very soft. They're very pigmented. A little goes a long way. You've got highlight options up here. The Cirrus shade is a gorgeous cheek highlight as well. You've got a shimmery brown down here. I mean, if you wanted to do a look and ignore the purples and burgundies and anything remotely reddish and just do like a neutral look with brown and gold, you've got that in here as well. Seriously, if you are like me and you like this color scheme and you want the most bang for your buck and at the same time not have to wade through way more shadows than you need, this is great. Now, this is not offering you all those kind of out there finishes that the Huda one was. You know, that one had those sheens that you can kind of use to top off a shadow, that color that was basically 100% glitter. That's not in here. What we have here finish-wise is matte here, here, and here, and everything else goes from kind of a satiny finish to a shimmery finish. And this is what I'm wearing on my eyes today. I've got the purple on my lids. I've got some of the dark brown in my outer corner. It was plenty dark enough for me. I've got this in my crease along with Dunes. Dunes is great for blending out the edges. It's just a little bit peachy. I also did a little bit of this shade, like just in my outer corner. You're probably seeing some red come out of the look there. And I used that on my lower lash line too. So it creates just a gorgeous look. But I just really wanted to share this with you guys because I was so excited to see the $42 palette deliver basically everything I want out of a look like this, like give me all the options, but in a more edited down shade selection. So I love this. I still love my Too Faced Just Peachy mattes because this is kind of a little bit on its own playing field because it is purely matte, but I adore the quality of these eyeshadows and it very much can give you that peach into like reddish plummy burgundy. If you're into that kind of look, it's great. The Huda and Natasha Denona, I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the beauty of these palettes, but I still have little bones to pick with them. And I feel like, you know, for the price tag, $65 and $129, you want them to be everything you need, right? You're putting that kind of money into them. And I just think there are a few little points where they're lacking. So I hope this video was helpful to you guys. I bet we'll continue to see some palettes coming out that follow this color scheme. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will talk to you guys again very soon. Bye.